So welcome everyone today to our webinar presented by Energy Code ACE. Today's speaker is Gina Rhoda from Gable and Associates. Gina is a certified energy analyst and certified energy plans examiner and lead accredited professional. She is involved in providing residential and non-residential energy calculations for a variety of building types throughout California. An instructor of full-day trainings and host of various webinars specific to Title 24, Part 6, Building Energy Efficiency Standards. Gina has been in the energy modeling field since 1991 through the course of 7 California building code cycles and is principal of Gable Associates, LLC, out of Berkeley, California. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gina and let her get on with the presentation.
Thank you everyone for having me here today. So our topic that Energy Code ACE would like to bring to you is one, show you a little bit about our website and all of the free resources available there, and then kind of dive right into what you guys are having your whole conference on. What are those non-residential commissioning requirements under Title 24 Part 6 for our current code, which is 2013, but also what's changing for the next code cycle, 2016, that goes into play January 1st of 2017. So Energy Code ACE is our name, and actually we have an overall name. It's the California Statewide Codes and Standards Team. Energy Code ACE is just a little bit more catchier. So that's how we kind of rebranded ourselves a few years ago. This program is funded by the California utility customers. That's you who pay your utility bills to any of these private utilities, under the auspices of the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, and very much in support of the California Energy Commission. We have a lot of stuff going on here at our website, and we have 3 major categories. We have tools, we have training, and we have resources, and we're adding to them constantly, and especially now when we have a code cycle change, a lot of information is being added almost on a weekly basis, so keep checking us out. ACE Tools is where we give you things that allow you to interpret and deal with the code requirements for Part 6 only. That's all we concentrate is the energy code. My favorites are ACE Reference. It combines the standard language, all of the manuals we have to our language, the appendices, the code behind how the software is developed, all of that into one searchable database with everything hyperlinked. It can be used online or offline. It's just my favorite. We also have ACE forms. We have so many forms associated with Title 24 Part 6. You'd probably be blown away if I told you how many pages of forms we have. This helps you figure out which forms you need. It does not fill out the forms for you, but it will tell you what forms you need for which aspect of the project. So again, ACE Reference combines these documents, and this is an old screenshot. We have added a lot more since then. We have the ACMs, we have the reference appendices, and brand new that just was added 2 weeks ago is changes to all of these resources for the 2016 code cycle. It kind of highlights where things are changing. It's a great way to be prepared for the next code cycle. Goes through all of our resources. Sometimes you can get a little overwhelmed with how you search, so it's just how you search on the internet. Please use as many words possible to define and tighten in your search pattern. ACE training, I just finished a Decoding Talk webinar series yesterday evening. We did one on multifamily, low-rise and high-rise multifamily. That happens every other month. It's the live webinars just like we have here. But we also have traditional classrooms where at all of our training facilities throughout California, you have live instructors, live classes regarding Title 24 content. We also have virtual classroom classes, and it goes over 3 days, 3 hours over 3 days with a live instructor, a group of people, but you're sitting at your computer taking that hands-on class. But those of you who don't like to interact with anyone, we've got something for you also, and those are our online self-study. Have a lot of information, especially regarding lighting controls, ventilation, issues that kind of need a little bit more looking at the information more than once to absorb some of the complexities regarding our control requirements of the code. ACE resources are 1 to 2 page little fact sheets, trigger sheets, different ways of looking at code language. Also we have infographics, visuals, fact sheets, trigger sheets, what do I need where and when, and checklists that are developed for the building departments. Though I find these checklists can be very valuable for others, making sure they're prepared to submit to the building department, because they will now know what is being reviewed by that building department for their submittal package. ACE Resources also has what we call a useful links, and this is a great one-stop place to figure out everything you need to know and who are all the players for Title 24 Part 6. Gives you all the information on the CEC and how to get there, KBEC, and NFRC for our windows. It's just all sorts of information on this 2-page resources of how to get a hold of all of these people. One of our brand new resources that we put out in the last month is what's new for the next code cycle. So this one is actually 1.5 pages long, but it goes through the envelope, mechanical, lighting, covered process, all aspects of the code, what's changing starting January 1st, 2017. You'll see that we have, I'm showing you the one here for non-residential. We also have one devoted to just residential construction. But since we were talking commissioning, I really concentrated all of my resources and what I'm showing you on non-residential. So the fact sheet that we have on commissioning went through quite a bit of rigorous review by not only our subject matter experts, but the CEC. Commissioning has really confused a lot of people in terms of what is covered under commissioning, what are the different flavors of commissioning, and who has to do all these various aspects of commissioning, because it doesn't quite line up with how people are doing commissioning throughout the rest of the United States. So a great little 2-page kind of informational sheet on how we do it here in California. We do also have an infographic that goes in companion with that fact sheet of what aspects of commissioning are required when. And in fact, this is what we're going to use as we go throughout the rest of our document, the rest of my minute time that I have with you guys here, of walking through what those commissioning requirements look and feel like for California during construction. So I wanted to show you a little, this is a resource that's not quite available yet on the Energy Code ACE website, kind of, it's a draft language right now, it'll be coming soon. But you'll see what we have here is what language has changed. Is there absolutely no change to that code language? Okay, great. If you've got that under your belt, you don't have to think about it anymore. Or is it being revised? It was language that existed, but now it's changing. Or is it just brand spanking new for the 2016 code cycle and really should spend a lot of time studying up on that? What I hope you see here for commissioning, there is no purple. There's nothing brand new for commissioning for 2016. There is some revised code language where they actually tried to attempt to make it a little bit clearer and a little bit more applicable to how people think and look at commissioning in California. They did make sure that they added language regarding, hey, we didn't mean to exclude the envelope in all of our commissioning requirements, so they made sure, yes, we did mean envelope also. And they also clarified who can sign off on these commissioning forms that are specific to California commissioning. We'll get into that a little bit later. Where you really want to go for your questions, one, you can get this through Reference ACE. It's in those Reference ACE materials, but it's the standards themselves. So I'm showing you a screenshot here of the 2013 standards and the 2016 standards. This is the language adopted by the CEC. They cannot change this language at all during the 3-year cycle of when this particular code is in play, but there are a lot of other resources that are provided by the CEC. So the standard section 120.8 is what is devoted to commissioning in our actual standards that I'm showing you here. But we also have a non-residential manual, and they have a chapter devoted to commissioning. That's chapter 12 of the non-residential manual. You can in fact go to the CEC website and just download that one chapter. You don't have to download all the chapters of the manual, which is pretty long. It's about 2,000 pages long. So it's a great thing that you could just have to download the one chapter. They also have what we call the non-residential appendices. These are things that, hey, you got to know about this also, and it applies to really what happens out in the field. So NA7, that's the non-residential appendices, Chapter 7, is devoted to the acceptance testing criteria that is applicable to all building types here in California. Now, many of these acceptance testing criteria, for those of you who do commissioning and are commissioning agents, will realize that it definitely has the look and feel of functional testing. So functional testing and acceptance testing blend out in the field with what has to happen to our buildings, whether they are triggered under commissioning or not. And I gave a couple links here where you can find these resources. The CEC also puts out a quarterly newsletter. This quarterly newsletter is so essential for when there are issues. Maybe things aren't completely clear. They clarify language and add more examples, and actually what happens the next year round, any information that was in the blueprint gets incorporated into the manual. But they've had a couple of blueprints talking about commissioning because there has been so much confusion. So in this blueprint number 107, they talked about, hey, commissioning is only triggered by brand new, spanking new buildings. This does not apply to additions. This does not apply to alterations to an existing building, only brand new buildings. Another clarification is, hey, we didn't mean to say commissioning applied to conditioned and unconditioned spaces. It only applies to the conditioned spaces of these buildings, because that's what the energy code is all about. Once we condition the spaces, the envelope and the mechanical systems get triggered in addition to lighting. It does not include high-rise residential occupancies or hotel-motel occupancies. Now, there may be mixed-use buildings, and we'll talk about what happens regarding mixed use in our next slide. Mixed use is not something, it's something we have to look at uniquely in terms of commissioning. California commissioning under Title 24 Part 6 does not require a third-party commissioning agent. And I know this is very unique compared to how many other states do it. So that commissioning agent can be pretty much anyone, but it does say they do need to be experienced. How we classify experienced, that's where everyone has kind of different opinions on that, but it does not say that it needs to be a third-party commissioning agent. So in our blueprint number 113, they went, okay, it is really getting confusing here regarding how people are looking at mixed-use buildings. And this is where they really dived into, if you have a mixed-use building that has a hotel-motel or a high-rise residential occupancy, the high-rise residential occupancy and the hotel-motel occupancy of that building does not trigger commissioning. But the non-residential occupancy of that mixed-use building will trigger commissioning. So this is when commissioning is not a building trigger, but an occupancy trigger. It will include all mandatory prescriptive and performance criteria for those conditioned spaces, and what is exempt is our covered process criteria of our code. Those are sections 120.6 and 140.9, and we'll get into that a little bit later also. The triggers for commissioning are design review, commissioning specifications, and that acceptance testing that has to be happening for every building type will be triggered for all brand new buildings, no matter how big they are. Now, what I like to call the full flavors of commissioning, which we'll be going through, not only will you trigger commissioning design review, these NRCC CXR forms, commissioning specifications, and acceptance testing, you'll also trigger everything else, is when that non-residential occupancy of conditioned space is equal or greater than 10,000 square feet. Less than 10,000, design review, commissioning specs, acceptance testing. Equal and greater than 10,000 square feet of conditioned space, everything. So Part 11 used to house commissioning. That's used to be its home before this 2013 code cycle. In the 2013 code cycle, the energy aspects of commissioning moved over to Title 24 Part 6, because that's the chapter of the building code of Title 24 that it really belongs. But some aspects of commissioning stayed behind in Part 11 because they didn't apply to those features of the building that Part 6 applies to. So Part 11, our CalGreen code, still has commissioning requirements for the renewable energy resources of a building. Part 6 is all about what's built into the efficiency of the building, not what is the generation of energy. So Part 11 still deals with that renewable energy generation systems of the building. Landscape irrigation systems, Part 6 has really nothing to do with water, so that stayed in Part 11. And again, water reuse systems. And buildings with an occupancy I, those are institutional, those are hospitals, those are prisons. And L, laboratories. Those have so many other energy strict requirements, typically under OSHPD, that those particular occupancies are exempt to Title 24 Part 6. As you can see, all those occupancy groups do not include I or L. They include A, B, E, F, H, M, R, S, and U. But Part 11 still then requires commissioning for those two occupancies that are exempt from Part 6. So I hope that helps clarify why is there still commissioning in Part 11, the CalGreen code, when it was supposed to have moved to Part 6. Well, it's because of the limitations of Part 6. Who is involved in commissioning? Well, hopefully every building has an owner, someone that says, hey, I want to build a building. And that commissioning authority or commissioning agent really needs to interact and talk to that building owner and go, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve with this building? How is it going to function? The design reviewer is going to be part of the design review process that is unique to the fact that commissioning got moved to Title 24 Part 6. Title 24 Part 6, they love to add forms. So it's a whole form aspect of commissioning. The acceptance test technician is a field technician who is doing their own functional testing out in the field. There may be other functional testing that is required above and beyond what is required to be done by an acceptance test technician, and that a commissioning agent is going to make sure that those are documented and scheduled properly. And then, of course, we have our contractor who is actually building and coordinating all of these aspects of what needs to apply to the building as it's being constructed. So we'd like to check your understanding. I have a question for you. I would like to know if you can tell me where can you find this amazing fact sheet on commissioning. So we're going to be pulling up the polling that is applicable to GoToWebinar and would like you to be able to answer where can you find this fact sheet regarding commissioning. And we weren't able to test this ahead of time, so. Okay.
So you should all be able to see the poll now. And using your mouse, go over on the dots next to the answers and select your answer. Give you just a few more minutes to put your answers in. Or I should say a few more seconds. Okay, looks like we have everyone, almost everyone who's voted.
And the results of our Check Your Understanding is?
Well,
I actually cannot see the results, so would love, Sherry, if you could tell me what the results were.
Yep, we're getting there.
Okay.
It wasn't there before. Okay, so the percentages is the CEC website is 18%. Energy Code ACE website is 73%. Energy Design Resource website is 0%. And the California Commissioning Collaborative website is 9%.
So those of you who chose Energy Code ACE, that is actually spot on. This is an Energy Code ACE only resource. The CEC website does have some great stuff. That's going to be the code language itself. And I absolutely love the California Commissioning Collaborative website, and they have other resources, but that would not include this resource. So the answer to this question is going to be the Energy Code ACE website, Fantastic for all of you who chose that particular selection. So can everyone see the screen as we move forward now, Sherry?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to do that.
There we go.
There you go. We do have
Okay,
one
great.
other question that just came in. If you want to take it now, it's what is the difference between the acceptance technician's test and the commissioning provider's test?
And as we go through these next slides, I'm hoping I'll answer that question.
Perfect.
So hold on to that answer, and if I don't answer it, when we get to that, then I obviously did this wrong.
Okay,
So,
perfect.
hold on, and hopefully I will. This was just to get you guys intrigued, because now we're going to actually dive into what are all these code requirements for California, what do they look and feel like. One of the things to be aware of is we have different aspects to our code. We have mandatory measures that must be done all the time, and there are absolutely no ability to trade them away. We have also prescriptive requirements that are dependent upon climate zone, because our entire energy code is dependent upon what is cost effective over the lifetime of that feature of the building. And the performance approach allows us to trade prescriptive requirements only. Commissioning is a mandatory requirement, so no one can trade commissioning away, and it has to be done again for all of those new non-residential buildings. So this is our infographic that we have regarding commissioning through Energy Code ACE, and we're going to concentrate on the design and plan review aspects and what is triggered in commissioning at those times. So we have the owner's project requirements, the OPR. That is going to be triggered for all new non-residential buildings or all new non-residential occupancies of a mixed-use building exceeding being 10,000 or more square feet of conditioned space. That OPR is really going to be about what are the goals of the building. This is really a discussion with that owner. What do you want to do? What's new for 2016 is they said, hey, talk about the envelope only. Let's not just concentrate on mechanical. Let's also talk about the envelope. Hopefully most people were doing that anyway, because that just makes sense. OPR is not required for a new building that's less than 10,000 square feet of conditioned space. The BOD, the basis of design, is now about how are we going to go about designing those systems. We want mechanical systems of this type that are going to be on or off during certain times. We want our lighting systems to meet certain lighting power densities and be controlled in a certain way. Now we're really talking about not just wishes, but design features that must be integrated into the building. Again, this is only triggered for brand new non-residential buildings or occupancies of mixed-use buildings with a conditioned space that's equal or greater than 10,000 square feet. This is not required for new non-residential conditioned spaces or occupancies that are less than 10,000 square feet. Design review forms, this is what was added new when it got moved over to Title 24 Part 6. These design review forms are basically checklists. They're checklists of, hey, what are your goals and desires and what are you putting into your design documents regarding these mechanical systems, these envelope features, these lighting fixtures. So it's basically taking that BOD and putting it into a checklist form and saying, now we want people to make sure the design integrates these features. This checklist has to be done twice. It's done at design review kickoff. It's schematic design. So this really has to be thought of way, way, way at the beginning, years before sometimes we're going to be going to the building department and submitting for plan review. We're going to go through the checklist at the design review kickoff. We're going to make sure everyone is on the same page regarding the goals set within those documents, and everyone has to sign off on the signature page. Then, before you go for building department review, someone has to go through that checklist again. So who is that person? So in 2013, they emphasized, hey, we want a licensed professional engineer to be that person who is reviewing these checklists. Depending on how big the building is, it could be the person who designed it if it's less than 10,000 square feet. It has to be someone else in the company who had nothing to do with this project. We want a fresh set of eyes between 10 and 50,000. And if it's greater than 50,000, heck, we want someone to be thinking about it, never having thought of the way they do things in that particular company. We want a third party. This is the one time we do see third party requirements here in commissioning to review. If it's a complex mechanical system, then a third-party licensed engineer is going to be that person who's going to review that mechanical system. And we will not be able to get into what's complex versus simple. We have some great, there's a recorded commissioning decoding talk in which we go over that in detail. That's available at the Energy Code ACE website. For 2016, they kind of went, oops, per the criteria of the business's codes and practices, we shouldn't have just said licensed engineer. We should have included licensed architect, and in some cases, a licensed contractor under the direct supervision of a licensed engineer or architect can be that person who is part of this review process. So this is unique and new to what's going on in California. Commissioning specifications, along with design review documentation, I kind of glossed over this. These are going to be required for all brand new buildings. I don't care what the square footage is for that conditioned space. So I need design review documents and commissioning of, hey, what needs to be commissioned in this building and who's going to be doing it? Well, that's where that flavoring of acceptance testing comes into play. Acceptance testing has to be done, like I said earlier, of all building types. And that acceptance testing is going to be done by a particular licensed contractor in the field testing their work or someone else's work. If the building is over 10,000 square feet, well then that commissioning the commissioning specifications might be saying, well, above and beyond what California requires in terms of acceptance testing, we're going to also require these other functional testing to be provided, and this is who is going to be doing that and when it is going to be required throughout the project. So now we talked about design and what happens when we submit. We've got to check your understanding. The OPR document is required when? When do I need to provide that documentation for a building? And we're going to go to our handy-dandy polling tool. There we go. That's the best way to say it.
All right, here we go again. The OPR document is required when? New and renovated buildings anytime. New non-residential buildings greater than 10,000 square feet. New non-residential buildings all sizes. New non-residential buildings less than 10,000 square feet. Okay, again, use your mouse. Select with the your mouse on the bullets next to it. And a couple more seconds, we'll make sure everyone's had a chance to vote.
And just so you know, I was able to figure out how to see what they're seeing. So when you close the poll, I can see it now.
Oh, good. Okay, 5 more seconds, everybody. All right, here we go. And there are your answers. You can see those now?
Yes, I can. So we had the majority of you answering. It's going to be required for new non-residential buildings that are greater than 10,000. It actually should be equal and greater than 10,000 square feet. That is exactly right. So the OPR, in terms of Title 24 Part 6 commissioning requirements, is only going to be required for those new non-residential buildings or occupancies of a mixed-use building that are 10,000 square feet or larger. Excellent. There we go. So now let's move on what happens during construction. Because now that we've set the stage and we've let everyone know this is what we want, the building owner's like, hey, I have certain requirements I want to have in place with my building. I'm spending a lot of money to do. Let's make sure they're actually being integrated during construction. So the commissioning plan basically is setting out what was established with the specification and says, now this is exactly how it's going to happen. This is when so-and-so is going to do this. This is what needs to be in place before this is tested, and then after that is tested, this needs to be the next thing that's done. It has to be very detailed. We need to know all the players. Who are the contractors? Who's responsible for what? And who's going to be that acceptance tester or be doing the functional testing if it's not an acceptance test technician? This is required for those new buildings or those buildings who have mixed occupancy of non-residential of 10,000 square feet or more of conditioned space. Now, it's usually developed during design, but it sometimes is a lot dependent upon when are those contractors in place. So we always like to say, make sure that this holds true before you start building to those contractors that have been selected for the job at that time. Functional performance testing. So now we're going to be talking about that whole acceptance test technician versus functional testing. So performance functional testing is, in terms of standard commissioning practices, is only required if that non-residential space, conditioned space, is 10,000 square feet or more. But we also have acceptance testing requirements in California that have to be done all the time. So functional testing may include acceptance testing, but usually functional testing has a different methodology in terms of keeping track of what's happening with acceptance testing or functional testing and the results of that testing. Acceptance test technicians can never ever walk away with saying we didn't make sure it was working, which might be happening in functional testing. You're keeping track of the fixes, how many times did we go back and deal with this, what are some issues that might have happened in terms of integrating that design into the actual construction practice. So what we like to say is this acceptance test technician aspect, and there are forms associated with this that acceptance test technician has to provide out in the field to be available to everyone, might be incorporated into the functional testing requirements that are triggered when that conditioned space is greater than 10,000 square feet. This acceptance testing for California requirements in all of these forms are happening all the time. When is acceptance testing triggered for California? Well, it's required for all lighting controls, and it's required for all mechanical control features also. Currently, that acceptance test technician for controls is a specifically trained and certified acceptance test technician by a provider. It can still be the installing contractor, does not need to be third party, but they have to go through some additional training on how to test those controls to California Energy Commission's criteria. For HVAC, well, that whole process isn't quite in place yet. So that acceptance test technician is going to be that installing contractor. They don't have to have the additional training and certification because it's not in place yet, but they still need to fill out these forms and follow the acceptance testing criteria that is laid out, I think, quite clearly within these documents. So now we've talked about what's happening in construction. We're going to now check your understanding regarding that process of commissioning per Title 24, Part 6. Maybe. There we go. Functional performance testing is for commissioning is going to be performed by who? So we just talked about this because there's many players involved here. Is it going to be the subcontractor? Is it going to be the professional engineer? Is it going to be the person as defined under the roles and responsibilities of who's in charge of what in that commissioning plan that's so important to have in place once we know all our contractors? Or is it going to be the commissioning agent?
So just about 10 more seconds left to vote. And there are your results.
Now, I'm wondering if I totally frustrated some of you because you wanted to check every single one of these as the correct answer, because the subcontractor can be that person who does functional testing. Same with the professional engineer, same with the commissioning agent. What's telling us who's responsible for that testing is that commissioning plan. So excellent to the majority of the people who answered, because that's where we're going to go to see who the heck is going to be doing this particular functional test, whether it's going to be acceptance test technician, etc., so on and so forth. Fantastic. I love it when we get the majority of the people to say it right. That means I'm actually maybe saying this right. Okay, let's talk about wrapping up our commissioning. So now we're starting to have inspections happening because we're wrapping up because we want to get our final occupancy permit. So our building inspectors are an integral process of any work that gets done here in California, and they are the ones who officially get to say, yep, this building is ready. All of this documentation that is applicable to commissioning, that is applicable to acceptance test technicians, acceptance testing, anything that has to do with documentation of building that project has to be made available to the inspector when they are on site. And that's where they get to go to saying, hey, where are you guys and things, who's done what, where, what's been done appropriately, what's still missing. So all of these forms that we're putting together, that we're dealing with, that we're using as commissioning, need to be made available on site for that inspector if they so desire to go through that documentation process. None of this preempts the responsibility of the inspectors to finalize the work. So we want to make sure that those who are using this building know how to use it. I wish that we had O&M training for all building types, including residential homes, because as our buildings are becoming more and more complicated with all these fancy controls going on, because it actually helps us perform so much better, save energy, save water, do so many amazing things. Well, it's like trying to program your remote and you didn't have the instructions and no one showed you how to do it. It's not a good place to be leaving our buildings. So O&M training is going to be required as part of this commissioning process, but sadly enough, and I do feel this is sad, it's only triggered if that is a new non-residential building or occupancy of a conditioned space of equal or more than 10,000 square feet. I wish it would happen all the time, but unfortunately code only requires that it happens with these larger buildings, and that commissioning agent is going to be responsible for making sure it's happening. We actually find that it's a great thing to happen during functional testing. Get those building staff that are going to be in charge of that actual equipment once it's handed over to see what's happening during functional testing, and those who are programming it and putting it into the building can show that staff what's happening after they leave. It's a great way to get everyone to feel comfortable with their equipment before they take it over. So the commissioning report, again, only triggered if it's a new non-residential building or occupancy that exceeds a conditioned space of 10,000 square feet or more. I could say that a little bit faster if I tried. It's going to be required of bringing all these documents that have been floating all over the place. We want them in one place. And I've heard people say that these could be like 3 humongous binders big, and they hand them over, and they know for a fact they're going to be in some dark closet somewhere, and no one's ever going to open them up again. We understand that. It hurts, but that does need to be handed over. That is part of how we wrap up our projects in terms of commissioning. So we have lots of ways you can get a hold of us at Energy Code ACE, lots of emails to go on here, and in fact, if any questions that you have, if you put them, oh, they don't have me on here. If you send that question to info@energycodeace.com, they will make sure that it gets to me. For those of you who are interested in my email, because I didn't put it on here, and I do apologize for that, that email is Gina, G-I-N-A, at Gable Energy, G-A-B-E-L, energy.com. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions after today. And thank you for being with us throughout our presentation on Energy Code ACE.
Thank you, Gina, for your presentation. Thank all of you for attending today. We look forward to seeing you all at NCBC. And with that, we'll close today's webinar.
Just a quick question. Did we have any other questions that I haven't answered?
Nope, I think you got them all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.